So if everyone remembers, we're in a really fantastic section. If anyone's read forward, this third section. So uh, we've done kind of the first two parts of the three main teachings of Sankhya wisdom. And remember, we said the Sankhya wisdom is specifically there for the purpose of discernment or discrimination. So the first element was remembering who we are, that we're more than these physical entities, but we're spirit, and that's our real identity that we should be connecting with, because it helps us break us out of our story that sometimes can hold us back. And then we spent the last few weeks talking about the three different energies by understanding the terrain around us, because not only is it important to understand who we are, but it's also important to understand the environment we're operating in, so we can try to coexist in the most optimal way. And then we specifically said that even all the three energies, even in sattva and goodness, that even that acts as a rope or is binding. So above all of these three energies is this what we call Shuddha Sattva, or pure goodness. And that's in fact achieved, if we remember, Krishna says that there's a process of devotion and surrender to him that actually allows us to rise above these three energies. And then the last section, this is that we're going to be going in today, is distinguishing between divine and ungodly qualities. So this is a very interesting section. Has anyone had looked at it?
I read it yeah.
Yeah, isn't it really awesome?
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so fantastic. It's a really great section. So we'll just start as usual with our invocation. So I'll just go ahead. Where are slides for that to show? All right. So as usual, our three elements of culture: bringing our full presence, respect for all that have gathered, and the determination to do the work that comes across us. I always like reminding ourselves, and it's even mentioned in these two sections, the two things we should always try to remember are the good others have done for us. So this space of thankfulness and gratitude, which always helps, as Simon mentioned, helps us live in a space of abundance. I really like the way he put it. And the second is the bad we have done for others, and this always keeps us in the frame of mind of wanting to improve and be better. And the two things we should always try to let go of are the bad others have done for us and the good we have done for others. And I'll just start with our invocation to bring in the auspiciousness to maximize all of our potentials. We give thanks. Om Gyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangulangete Grim Yat Kripataham Vande Shri Guru Dinataranam. Vancha Kalpatrubhyascha Kripasunda Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So as we always recite, we were born without knowledge, and our teachers have opened our eyes with the torch of knowledge. We offer our respects to them. I offer our sincere respects to all of our teachers who, by their grace, turn the dumb into eloquent speakers and allow us, the lame, to cross mountains. And finally, I offer all my sincere respects to all of you seekers of the divine who can fulfill the desires of everyone, because you are full of compassion for all living beings. So again, once again, thank you so much. This is definitely always one of the highlights of my week, and I love reading and unpacking parts of this book together. So this chapter is very much about these, if everyone's probably heard this term of the fighting of the good and the bad dog. And this chapter is very much about that, is that we, if you read in this chapter, part of the journey of the dark night of the soul is that there's this uncovering of things within us that we don't like to see. right? And I'm sure we've all come across things within ourselves that we don't typically are happy about. And there's generally always going to be this, this conflict between the good and the bad dog. And so this this section is very much about this conflict and how we can in fact choose that good dog on a daily basis. And so I was just speaking to a mentor of mine yesterday, and he was just saying that when we have a contrast, the contrast in fact helps us bring clarity. And I really like that point because sometimes we don't like facing the not so great sides about ourselves, but that contrast of where we are and where we want to go, in fact, helps us achieve more clarity within ourselves. So it's not always a bad thing that we should push away, but again, always recognizing that there's that lower and higher self. That's really the analogy here with the two dogs. Paul, thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Sorry, I joined late this morning. It's good to see you.
No, it's okay. We just started, and we were just saying that they're in the third section of this section, the distinguishing between the divine and the ungodly, and that this chapter is very much about knowing that we have two dogs within us, the good and the bad dog, and that fight within the two of them, and how we can better choose a good dog. So honestly, I feel like this chapter is all a section that we can read, but I just wanted to start off in that first story. It's really talking about, this section is talking about, there's two kind of features that talk about the wealth of the gods, and these features that he discusses in that first section. This is actually from Bhagavad Gita 16.1 to 16.3 for the specific reference, but most of these are all listed out as qualities. So we see fearlessness, purity of heart, discipline, non-violence, truthfulness, avoiding anger, non-attachment, steady determination, compassion for all entities, tranquility, compassion, kindness, humility, vitality, patience, aversion to fault finding, and freedom from envy, and the passion for honor. And there's just, I think those are all of them. Actually, there's a couple more that I'll share. I couldn't list all of them on the page. One of them was freedom from craving, modesty, forgiveness, cleanliness, and then the last one was freedom from malice and pride. So that fits with the last one there. So looking at this list, just, you can take a minute to take it in, but what I'd like for all of us to do is just take a moment just to reflect on, and this can be a personal exercise. We don't have to discuss it if no one wants to, but I just wanted everyone to take a look at these lists of qualities and reflect on which ones they've taken time to cultivate in your life, right? So there's, wonderful qualities there. And I just wanted people to kind of think about themselves in reflection of these qualities, but then also choose one or two qualities that you'd like to develop further, because this chapter very specifically states that the wealth, there's wealth that most people associate, which is financial wealth or potentially even relationships. And that's, I would say, the other type of wealth is relationships. But for relationships to prosper, it definitely requires some of these qualities. And so we want to look at wealth from a different lens today. And again, these are very specifically described as the wealth of the gods, right? There's a name that's given to this in the Bhagavad Gita. So this is the exercise we want to, do for a few minutes. So again, I'll put up the list there just so people can see it. So you're one, reflecting on qualities that you felt that you've cultivated or trying to cultivate, consistently. And then the next part of the exercise is just trying to think about one or two that you would like to develop further. there's definitely going to be some of these that maybe come more naturally to all of us than others. So it's nice to be able to identify those. And then, all right, we will, anyone want to share any reflections in case there are any from these qualities?
I guess my reflection would be that it's a constant reflection, that without that, how can we continue to develop them unless we take the time to review them and to come back to it again day after day? Because just when you think something's going well, then it's like, then you're off the path again, right? And it's funny because I put down, so my two were discipline and non-attachment. And, I think discipline, it's like, well, I've gotten better in terms of things I can be disciplined in, but there's so much more, and then, so it's just that constant awareness and looking at it. Okay, what's going on here? Taking that time to pause and to regroup.
Yeah, there's, I was just going to say, for each quality, we may have cultivated a degree in each one, but it's such a huge, large spectrum. And the way we know is that we have examples of people in our life that we have seen or can point to that are further along with certain qualities, right? And I think having those visual examples are really important to, to help us continue to, continue the pursuit, right?
And I think that,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, the mentorship or accountability, but even having something like this when we talk about it openly, because it's not many people we talk about these things to. Yeah,
I know. I just wanted to point out for me, like, one of the ones that I put to be further cultivated is the aversion for fault finding. And this chapter very much specifically goes into this. If you remember, there was an analogy of when we fault find, there's a bridge between two hearts that are made. And that when we fault find or find, criticized, that bridge between the two hearts, in fact, those qualities of the other come within ourselves, right? So I thought that was a really powerful way, analogy to think about it. And then, this one I was also thinking about was for myself was, it's described on our path to self-realization that the last quality to be uprooted within all of us, that's the hardest one on this list. I just want to share is the freedom from passion, the freedom for the passion to receive distinction or recognition. So it's called pratishta. Pratishta means the desire for recognition or fame. This is in fact the last, and we may say that, we're totally over it, but I'm confident for sure that if we kind of, dig around this one a little bit, it shows up in some way. But I just thought that was very interesting, that according to the yoga tradition, this is, that desire for pratishta or recognition and fame is in fact that last quality to, to be uprooted. So Stacy, please.
Yeah, so I was looking at, the qualities of steady determination and discipline. Those are ones that I think I've always had, right? In terms of I've always just, but then the other side of it is the non-attachment, like letting go of the fruits, right? And tranquility. Because when you're doing all these things, sometimes you look up and it's like, well, wait a minute, why am I doing this, right? Or is it resulting in what I even want, right? Because you're so busy doing. And so that's why I put those two about the determination and discipline as things that yes, I have, but then the other side of it is kind of that balance or the better integration of it into your life, right? The perspective.
Yeah, no, it's a really good comment that when we start on pursuits, there's certain desires we have, and then along the way we have to stop and see, like, is this really what I wanted out of the process, right? And I think a lot of times we're steered in directions that we didn't anticipate. So that checking in is really important. And to me, like when we review these qualities, that is the checking in process, right? So yeah, no, thank you. Hiba, do you want to share something?
Yes, yes. First, I got aligned with Stephanie, what she was saying regarding, this continuous reflection. And it's really very true, because I had many thoughts when you put these values. And then I said, okay, I'm good, for example, in discipline, but I'm so far where I want to reach. So, it's a continuous. For other people, they see it, we're very disciplined. And for yourself, no, I'm so far because, this is it. So what I cultivated before I can go back, it's determination and being patient, being patient in life, and experiences, a lot of experiences I went through learned me how to be patient. But the things that I want to cultivate are many. Honestly, I thought a lot of things I want to learn and to do better in it. The first was to get, I didn't understand if it's anger or getting less angry. I didn't understand I want to ask Ricken about it. It's I forgot how you mentioned. Can you please put
it was
getting
I mean, there's two ways. It's either freedom from anger or avoiding anger. Two ways of seeing things.
Yeah, but it's getting less angry, or what is it exactly?
So basically,
what does it mean?
not having anger come within us.
Yes.
So trying to avoid anger altogether.
I guess this, yeah, yeah, this is it. I don't know. This is something I need to work on, because I get this spark directly and it go down, but I don't know how to work on it, So if anyone have insight about it, it will be very helpful. Because I get very emotional about it. It's something not done in a good way, or I'm expecting other results. So this is not good. I know about it. I need to work hardly to improve it and get more discipline.
I was just thinking that at least for myself, there's been a lot of time spent with people who are, I think time, the company we choose and having those that are more calm and less angry is helpful to see the example. And then after that, it requires, I think both, just practical aspects, are meditation and journaling. I think both of those simultaneously really help, because you still need the journal to dump out a lot of the negative emotions you have. And then I feel like I always bring all of my emotions to the meditation space because there's a space for them to be processed. So I'll put those two things out there as practical approaches for anger. But with the, complemented with the company of others who are further along that path than us. I think that's also important.
Okay.
Paul, did you want to share something?
So my first two were non-attachment and freedom from envy and from the passion for honor. And then I added avoiding fault, but to the point of Hiba in terms of anger, and Rickens in terms of being around people who don't have it. Unfortunately, my home environment had anger quite prevalent, and I had to fight that one fairly intently for a very, very long time. And the path I took included emotional intelligence and sort of studying my own behaviors and noticing what my triggers were and trying to find different ways to deal with them when they came. Doesn't mean I still don't get angry and have difficulty sleeping, i.e. last night, but I contain it a little bit better and work around it. So that so in terms of the non-attachment for me and my makeup, it's always about like root cause and how can I do better. So the non-attachment for me is difficult in that way. And the freedom from envy and passion for honor, I didn't do it envy me envying others, but how I am affected by others envying me. I don't know if that was the way it was intended, but
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Kind of, I mean, not envying others, but how it may kind of land when it's towards you, right?
yeah. Yeah, I've got some of that going on right now, and in a few different areas, and I don't like it.
Yeah, and you know, one of the principles in this Bhagavad Gita is that, you know, we should try to, you know, live a life where we don't, you know, we're not trying to provoke others,
Yeah.
but clearly it's such a prevalent, you know, jealousy and envy are so prevalent in society that, you know, even in our trying to live our authentic selves, it comes along.
Yeah.
And I think I really think for ourselves, when it comes along, it's also part of the journey where we have to, I think we have to continue to, I think that's where determination is tested, because there's maybe an element to contract in those times. I don't know if everyone else can relate to that, but yeah, it requires determination to kind of still live the authentic, you know, that authentic journey, even when things that are out of our control, which I see that one being, you know, if we're trying to not live a way that's provoking to others, you know, that's the test to continue on and live that authenticity is where determination is tested. But thanks for, Paul, you reminded me just, you know, and I was just thinking about Hiba, that in fact, even talking about our anger with others, whether it be, you know, people that we feel are less, you know, potentially angry than us and can help steer it, or even, I think that, you know, there's even a space for counseling, even when things are stable in our life. Because, you know, it doesn't have, most people go to counseling of some type when there's a crisis. And I've used counseling actually when just for maintenance, and maintenance meaning, you know, there's no catastrophe, but again, like all of these qualities still come up potentially on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, when, at least when there's no catastrophe, you have space, like the mental space, to be able to look at certain things in your life and, you know, do more processing, versus, you know, in the catastrophe or the crisis situation, you're just dealing with the one specific situation. And obviously there will be certain qualities that are acute, but I like the idea of just emotional intelligence and counseling, even for, you know, just our date, you know, just regular maintenance. I don't know how Tiffany feels about that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I've been in counseling for like, I don't know, 12 years now. Like, and I go every month.
I think there's a huge role for it.
Yeah. There was a time, again, it's kind of one of those things that when there is crisis, then it kind of ups, but it's not wonderful as a maintenance. But just, I was going to ask Avni that question because, you know, so many times people come in to see me from a medical perspective, and I talk to them about counseling, and I try to use the word coaching. But because that's kind of part of that whole, I think, accountability, which is one of the things that I added to how can I cultivate this more too, right? And do you find, Avni, with your clients that these sorts of things do come up with some individuals?
Like what comes up in terms of accountability, as in all of this comes up. And the fact that, you know, when we're trying to adopt all of these type of positive values, the negative values that do creep in is because of our conditioning when we are young. So what I help people to do, and that's what comes up all the time, is to basically to help them understand what has happened before. So not sweep it under the carpet, because you can't get rid of anything, but take a look at it differently. So that hurt or that anger is, that baggage is then worked on and is really lightened, and you learn from that particular situation as what's gone on. So yes, I do that day in, day out. It's amazing. And yeah, and even I'm a coach. I have a coach. I don't have a counselor. I don't know what the difference is, but yeah, just
I use the word counseling, but I think coaching can also be used in the same way. I think maybe counseling has more of a negative connotation. I'm not sure, but we're all
Could be
trying to
something
develop ourselves. So I use the easy term.
something to do with North America and England and counseling people use more there. Yeah, I think.
I think counseling to potentially maybe use in the context of having like a mental health problem and you're getting help with it. But I also see it using it in the space for, as Hiba was saying, try to deal with one's anger, right? So,
This is my son.
oh, turn
My
the camera a little bit more. We
big
can't
eyes.
see. Oh, he
No, he's
disappeared.
hiding now. No.
Oh,
He
okay.
disappeared, yes.
No.
It's fine. He got shy. Yeah.
All right.
It's fine.
I just
So,
wanted to share
yeah,
something.
Anthony, I have a question. I'm sorry. I have a question. You were mentioning that you were checking with your client. They were trying to understand what makes them feel this. This is some recurrent, like a common base that let people have this same feeling and get suddenly angry, or this is what you were explaining.
Yeah, so basically what we do is that for example, we talk about, so I use timeline therapy to clear heavy emotions, limiting emotions. Like for example, anger, we actually go in your timeline. Now, if you don't believe in reincarnation, we go from the day you were conceived, and we actually find the root cause of when was the first time you ever felt angry. And basically, a lot is done before that. I can do timeline with them. I have to build that rapport with them. Then they go back and they try to remember the first time, and it could have been at the age of 2, it could have been at the age of 5, when they first remember. And then we look at that situation, because what happens is that when you've had that experience of anger, that then gets saved in your mind, and everything, like your values, your anger, your emotions, your facial expressions, your environment, everything gets saved, and then it reoccurs as a behavioral pattern. So then we clear everything on the timeline from the root cause all the way up until now, with a lot of learnings of how they can look at that first time. A lot of people take that first time of anything, anxiousness, fear, as their own fault. They really look at that situation and think, I was the cause of it, or it, and we need to change that to say that, that you weren't at the age of 2, who can be the cause of people getting angry, or around them, or them getting angry. So it's really fascinating. So any heavy emotion we clear with timeline therapy. It's amazing.
That sounds like a great exercise. Maybe you can lead us all in that in a future session.
Yeah, I could do something. I mean, I've never done timeline therapy as a group, but we can do something. Yeah, I can think of something. Yes, definitely.
We can be your testing ground.
I've got so many testing grounds. I can't do. Yeah.
No, I'm being serious. I would love to do it for myself.
Yes.
So if everyone else is interested,
yeah, me too. Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah. So maybe I could do a demo, and then, but to do it all together, because all of our root causes would be at a different point. But we could do it. I can do it. Anything is possible. Everything is possible.
Good.
I wanted to just share, sorry, very quickly.
Please.
I really believe that all of this, I really want to improve on tranquility. I think if I have that tranquility approach, it brings equanimity, and with equanimity, a lot of this avoiding anger, non-attachment, just everything then dissolves. So for me, tranquility is a big one, is a real big one. So, yeah.
And I think, just going back to that point on tranquility, I think it very much stems from the first principle of, or actually even the first two, we discussed it. One, remembering who we are, right? So kind of getting us off with the mentor yesterday, we were talking about there's two drivers that can drive your chariot in life. One is yourself and two is Krishna, right? And when we drive our chariot, it's ego-driven. And when Krishna drives our chariot, it's spirit-driven or soul-driven, right? And so I think one, just recognizing, remembering who we are is a good way to kind of get us out of our story to be more tranquil when conflict comes about, because it's coming for sure. And then two, that last point that was made last week from Krishna in understanding our terrain, is that if we see the world like, from these perspectives of the three energies, then we know it's the functioning of the three energies, that are happening at any given point in time, and there's a mixture of each. And that perspective helps us, kind of step back and not get consumed by, what's unfolding in front of us. And again, these are just reflections from the 2 points that were made earlier, but I think these 2 points will help us with that tranquility. Stacy?
Yeah, so on that, I mean, that's mine too, Abney, right? Is tranquility, but I found a lot of resiliency, a lot from, Robin's 20-20-20, right? In the morning. And, I don't do that strictly anymore because, fortunately I have more than an hour now that I can take, or I decided I'm going to take, right? Because the 20-20-20 can be a little bit, rigid. But I find that doing that morning routine, like filling your cup, it's like you become more like the lotus flower, like your beautiful example that you gave, right? Where things just kind of roll off you a lot more. And I have found just great tranquility from what I'm doing in the morning, because it's like you think about filling your cup. If something goes to drain it down a little bit, right? You still have reserves, especially if you get it overflowing before 6:30 in the morning. And so it just makes just such a massive difference. I've found in being able to deal with whatever life gives you.
Yeah, no, it's such a great point about trying to fill the cup to be able to be tranquil for the rest of the day. I couldn't agree more about the importance of that on a daily basis. And if you remember from one of the stories, I'll just read it, but he says here, Shukla recommends cultivating helpful habits to house helpful values. And this, he says, appears over time with practice. It's like building muscle. You have to keep at it every day. Such a great point.
Rick, and just on the point of counseling or coaching, I know that even Robin in his latest book recommends a team approach whenever he takes somebody on. And one of the people in the team he recommends is a psychotherapist. And just as we were all chatting, and I have this thing about the universe speaks to us in interesting ways, I flipped my daily calendar. And here's the quote that it says, in all my years of psychotherapy, I've never met a client who suffered from being too kind to themselves. So there are a few things that kind of triggers. So I have wanted to look into a psychotherapist, but I understand that there's a whole bunch of different types, and I have no idea where to start or where to find a good one near me. But I do like the concept of sort of self-maintenance. And on a regular sort of routine. I think that would be great for all of us. And it is something Robin recommends. I just don't know how to find a good one.
Paul, I can at least share my experience with you offline.
Yeah, that'd be great. Cool.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Also, my school of thought is neuro-linguistic programming. If you could find an NLP coach, I think NLP just has so many wonderful tools that don't keep you wallowing in things. It allows you to look at it and drive forward, as you said, in terms of maintenance, not making things so big, because otherwise you relive it. So if you could find an NLP coach near you, I think neuro-linguistic programming is fascinating and fast, and it just works, shifts you so fast. So that's my recommendation.
Nice. We just wanted to move on with some of the other chapter. So that was a great initial discussion on the wealth of the gods, but now we're going to move on to the wealth of the ungodly. And so these are also, we're going to basically do a very similar exercise where first there's, and these are distinctly described. This is for a specific reference. This is in 16.4 of the Gita, if you're looking for the specific reference, but these are the qualities that are listed: hypocrisy, vanity or arrogance, egotism, anger, harshness, absence of wisdom. So I'll come back to them, but really the exercise is really the same thing. Is, which of these qualities do we know is there within us? However, we choose to sweep under the rug. So I think this is just, the question is just being asked in that way to kind of help maybe open up some blind spots, and potentially face something that we don't always choose to bring forward. And then here we're just going to start with one quality that you'd like to shine the light further on. So if everyone wants to take a couple of minutes to reflect on these qualities. And so the first exercise was trying to identify something that we potentially tend to sweep under the rug, and then was just choosing one we'd like to shine the light further on. And again, we've talked about great approaches already, but maybe just choosing one for now. This one we could reflect on for a while, but if there's any reflections on these, interestingly, the quality list of qualities is shorter. At least, I mean, we can probably create offshoot qualities from each of these. I will say that the quality of patience is needed to approach any 6 of these. But does anybody have anything to share on these specific 6 qualities? Please go ahead. One reflection that I had, for at least I was just thinking about myself and just the quality of harshness. And I think the quality of harshness sometimes can come up in the expectation we have both with ourselves, and so being hard on ourselves. And then that also translates then into having harshness on others with the expectations we have of others as well. So that was just one reflection that I had about the quality of harshness and how that sometimes, doesn't necessarily come in maybe a very gross form, but can come up in more subtle ways. Tiffany?
One that came up for me is hypocrisy. And it's so funny that they use this word because, for me growing up in the church, it was a hypocrisy that made me almost leave, right? But in my own life, like there's a phrase that I have on my wall and it says, my life is my message. And the biggest thing I feel as a physician, if I can't walk the walk and talk the talk, then how can I be telling patients that I see every day? How can I honestly be doing this with any type of integrity if I don't do it myself? Mm-hmm. So it's a constant, something I reflect on all the time, because if I'm going to talk to them about nutrition or exercise or discipline, then I need to instill these qualities within me. And so that one really resonated today.
Yeah. I know the quality of hypocrisy is that's also one that's very much on the spectrum. Like we may be on the same spectrum as someone else, but can be hypocritical of somebody else. Or we can be hypocritical because we may just be, on a different side of the spectrum, but we're still on that spectrum. That's the bottom line, right? So that's where I think the biggest combat for hypocrisy, which I tried to, bring up in every session, is this quality of compassion. Like, I think, you know, really going deep with our own challenges will help us, you know, potentially, hopefully not be so hypocritical of others.
And I think honesty, like for me with patients, you know, and maybe, I don't know, with like those others that do coaching, but sometimes to say this is tough, like it is a struggle to have like time management or to go to the gym. Nobody wants to do this. And often I feel that that compassion that I have toward me and that honesty with them, and maybe that bit of vulnerability can go a long way too.
Mhm. Yeah, I think when we, at least, you know, when we, at least with patient in the patient setting, which is, you know, definitely a coaching type of setting, is when we can share our own, you know, sometimes challenges. Obviously there's always kind of boundaries, but I think that vulnerability can, you know, also be used as a tool to help others. Sorry, I didn't know whose hand. I think Paul was next.
It's all good. So my two were harshness and anger, and they both kind of stem, I think, from they surface in me when I am typically stressed or I'm tired, lonely, and that sort of stuff. So one of the things, I don't know who said it, but I think regardless of whether you're looking at harshness or anger, I think compassion to yourself and to others would probably go a long way to not having those things get triggered, as well as, you know, slowing down, being kind to myself, and connecting with people. So yeah, my two were harshness and anger.
Thank you. No, those are, yeah, no, and just I was just noting down what you were saying about the instances when it can come up, you know, specifically like being fatigued, right? Or overwhelmed. I think those are definitely times where the, you know, when the load is higher than, you know, we have the ability to resist the load, then I think, yeah, that both of those qualities are really have a tendency to come in.
I'm
Yeah,
at a
that's
point right
great.
now where I'm trying to slow down. So I've reduced my work hours per week and my work days, but I'm still trying to condense the same amount of work. So they're starting to resurface a little bit. So, but difficult at first, messy in the middle, and beautiful in the end. So
Yeah, no, thank you.
What was that term, sorry, that that Robin uses? Is it cognitive bandwidth? That's Robin's term, right? That we only have such an amount of bandwidth, and once it's used up, that, you know, then we can't make the good decisions and everything else, and the tempers and all that. I thought it was Robin. But
You know, it definitely sounds like a term that he would bring up. I mean, I know there's another term like you know, like decision making kind of capacity. Like we have a little limited amount of decision making capacity in a day as well. But cognitive bandwidth, for some reason, it's just not coming to me. Stacy, did you have something that you want to share?
I think I just had a thought after what Tiffany was saying about just, you know, authenticity, right? It's vulnerability, but it's also authenticity. And I think being able to being willing to share your own struggles, I think can be the biggest motivator for others, right? You talked about hypocrisy, and you think about, you know, especially being a doctor or a prominent coach or something like that, you know, that people will look up to if you're willing to show your journey, you know, not just the end result, right? But your journey. I think it makes a big difference. And that's something that I've been on a journey to share as well, right? And it's hard, but to do that, I mean, you just get some amazing feedback from people and how inspiring that is. So much more so than, you know, oh, do these 3 tips or whatever, you know, and to really take people through that kind of journey. It's hard to do. It's hard to get to the point where you can do that, but I do find it's worthwhile.
Yeah, I think bottom line, it comes down to, as you were saying, I think the vulnerability is I think sometimes that vulnerability quality is wrapped as what I think essentially is honesty, right?
Yeah,
You know?
right. And
But-
confidence, to be able to share, you have to have lots of confidence to be able to share where you have shortcomings,
Mhm. Yeah, no, for sure.
It's
Yeah.
strength that seems like weakness, but it's really strength.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's where I'm always thinking about this quality of humility. There's that it's not like humility also means that there's assertiveness at times. It's not like we're just a doormat, right? Where for people to come and walk all over, because humility in fact takes a lot of strength of character and confidence. And I think really what we're trying to develop further in these sessions, especially in this chapter of Sankhya wisdom, is kind of the discernment of humility not being just kind of always the same way, but knowing when to discriminate. So I know we're coming to the end. I wanted to read like a couple of stories, so we'll pick up on the actual sections that we wanted to read. If people have to go, that's totally fine. If we want to read one section, we can. What's the consensus? Sorry, Paul?
I'm good with one section.
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, let's read section number 2, if someone wants to pick up. So it's on page 260, and everyone will definitely, to some extent, identify with this story. It's such a powerful one. Does someone want to read? After 14 years of marriage, that's where it starts.
I feel like I started it. So I can go.
Go ahead.
So after 14 years of marriage, Cloud's wife Amber left him for a yoga instructor. Cloud plunged into a dark night of the soul. During their marriage, Cloud had wanted children, but Amber had been distinctly unenthusiastic. Within a few months of meeting her new yoga instructor, they had moved to San Francisco, and Amber found herself expecting a baby. Most people would have been filled with bitterness and fury, but Cloud's response surprised me. He never spoke ill of Amber. If Cloud's friends began disparaging her, he refused to join in. Instead, he deliberately chose to remain respectful of her, even though his world had been thrown into turmoil. The dark night of a soul is the perfect time to develop kindness and compassion, both towards oneself and towards others, despite the pain. Cloud carried a lot of pain, but he refused to linger in self-pity, taking ownership of his life. He contemplated and acknowledged the mistakes he had made in the relationships and how he might have contributed to the breakup. This took courage and strength. There were still unresolved legal issues between Cloud and Amber, including a third-party court case relating to their previous business together. Amber had taken the better half of their joint property portfolio, but Cloud didn't look for payback. Instead, he helped Amber settle the case without her knowing. Divorces and breakups can become bitter, drawn-out disputes with both parties intent on destroying each other. They easily elicit the worst in us, our ungodly side. Cloud was deeply interested in Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of sacred love. He studied the Gita often and sought to culture divine qualities such as nonviolence, avoiding anger, never malaligning others, compassion, kindness, humility, and the absence of malice. Cloud's teacher had taught him the wisdom of trees. Yes, trees. A tree doesn't take it personally if we don't bow down in gratitude for the oxygen it provides. It gives whatever it has to others, its shade, its flowers, its fruits, without concern about receiving anything in return. It braves the scorching afternoon heat and torrential rains without complaining, offering shelter to those in need. And if someone arrives with an axe to cut it down, it remains free from malice and the desire for revenge. By meditating on the nature of a tree, we can develop the qualities of tolerance and generosity. Cloud wanted to emulate a tree, not an axe.
All right. I was just reflecting when Avni was talking about timeline therapy, and going back to the first time ever. I'm sure most of us have maybe gone through some type of relationship breakup, you know, over the years, even if it was before we were married. And yeah, I think those particular situations in life can definitely leave a deep impression. And so I was just thinking about this story in reflection to, you know, potentially timeline therapy. Anybody have any thoughts or comments on this story? Relatable?
Oh, sorry, I haven't put my hand up.
Please, Avni.
Yeah, so I've heard things like like this before, like be like nature, you know. But isn't it quite impossible with the, you know, the complexity of our soul and intelligence to be anything like a tree, or I don't think it's possible. I'm so sorry. I
Yeah.
think we're just not made like that. Humans are, you know, in terms of the higher intelligence, in
Yeah,
terms of
like, you know, the cognitive
exactly.
bandwidth is different.
I know that we are not more intelligent. I know that, you know, God, I wish that everyone, the world would be a better place, but then that we wouldn't have so much advancement in life, you know, so much development. But I'd love to be a tree. It's that what is that you said before? It's compassion for all entities.
Mhm.
That's the one, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's you know, when I think of these qualities, I'll just put up the slide that I had in reference to this one. But this analogy of the tree, we'll come across it again in this chapter. But there's very much, a tree is a very prominent analogy in the yoga teachings because of the qualities it represents. And they're all, I agree with you, Avni, they're great. I think of these as qualities to aspire for, but that if we're looking for, you know, examples, and let's say we may not have even sometimes people that imbibe these, that we use nature in those moments, right? So I think they serve as tools for us to be able to reflect on more so in our day-to-day life when those people may not be around. But you're right, it's so much more complex with the, you know, with the ego, and kind of that higher level, like development of intelligence and cognition also comes with a high price too, right?
So is it, so the soul has the soul, the tree has a soul. So why doesn't it have an ego? Like, yeah, question. Like, yeah.
So I think you know, that's a great question. When, I mean, even like animals, like we know animals, I think we can more very like easily identify with, you know, beings that you can relate to. But I think there's, you know, it's described, at least in the yoga text, that there's 8,400,000 species of life. And so that's a lot of different, you know, species. And human is just one of them, right? And I think each species of life have been kind of endowed with certain gifts. You know, that's the way I like to think about it. You know, like we can fly, but birds can fly, right? Certain, you know, animals can do certain things. Certain, you know, aspects of nature, you know, also have certain qualities. And so, although they're all living beings, they're the spectrum of qualities that, you know, each of all the different living entities have been bestowed with are all different. And so that difference there is, I think that difference there is to create harmony, in the sense that every living entity, even the tree, serves a very important purpose in that, you know, in the kind of the circle of life. But I can't tell you why, the trees only, the trees don't have that consciousness. But from my understanding, I've come to see, my understanding is that of these, species, when when there was a divine creator, the qualities were all, distributed in different, not to different degrees, and not even to, in one sense, like higher or lesser, but different gifts were given to different living entities, and they all serve a specific purpose, right? So the tree also serves a very important purpose in our lives. Sometimes we acknowledge it, sometimes we don't. But the qualities, I think, that they exemplify, I think it's such a great opportunity for us to look at a tree from a totally different lens than just, absorbing CO2 and, like helping with oxygen.
In fact, you know what? I've never asked this before, and it just makes it so clear that ego is so separate from the soul. Because
Yeah.
if every soul had an ego, all these, trees and everybody would have an ego, but its ego is separate because you can
Yeah.
have a soul and an ego. Yeah, I've never asked that before. God, I have to go back and ask my Jane class teacher.
Yeah, no, thank you. But I think that again, the the development of the human consciousness, definitely comes with, and I look at that as coming with a certain level of responsibility as well, right? There's distinct responsibilities that are there because that cognition and intelligence is more developed.
There's also a point whereby they also mention that's in Jainism, but that actually it's only in the human state can you reach the next point of enlightenment.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't do it in other, forms. Like you can't even do it as an animal. You need the intelligence to be able to, one, inquire about what is our purpose, and two, to be able to self-regulate, right? So self-regulation is a human quality because animals are driven by senses, right? And so they, they're typically don't have the same degree of self-control. So that's it for today, but thank you so much. This was, we're going to get into to the stories a little bit more next week, but yeah, I just thought that the start of this chapter, I wanted to kind of just lay down some reflection time for us.
Thanks, everyone. See you next
Yeah.
week.
Thanks. We'll see everybody next week.
A great week, everyone. See
Thank
then.
you.
There.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.